Hello, potential viewers. Welcome to my channel. The other day, podcast legend Joe Rogan had something to say about video games on one of his shows. And what was his general idea?
And video games are a real problem. They're a real problem. You know why? Because they're fucking fun.
Addictive.
And you don't, yeah, well, I have a real problem with them.
Now, to view something as a problem, one usually has a level of justifications around them. And if you are about to convince others that your perception of a phenomenon is problematic, it would be good that you provide some reasons that are not based on your projection and bear small weight on their connection to what others can relate to. And Joe Rogan did provide a reason here for his point, that video games are too much fun. This may seem like not entirely a good reason, at least not good enough, nor reasonable enough to warrant a lot of people's sympathy. I can certainly relate to the immediate negative gut reactions to his argument. Someone basing their problematic claim on the aspect of something being too much fun seems a lot like the kind of evangelical and puritanical crap that we saw almost 2 decades ago when pastors claimed that Pokemon being a gateway to witchcraft. But there is indeed a point to what Joe Rogan said here. The video games being hyper-stimulating and thus, as the guest agrees, that it can be addicting. And it seems that quite a lot of people hastily reacting negatively to his comment forgot about how he laid this preface before saying video games are a problem.
But I think that there's a lot of people that don't have any, there's no one, they're not modeling their life after someone that they see that they admire. Someone that's successful, someone that is doing something that they enjoy and love. Sometimes kids have to see that. Right. And if their parents are living a bullshit life and their neighbors live in a bullshit life and most of their family lives a bullshit life, they just fucking lay around, you know, and then they seek refuge in drugs or video games or something that stimulates them.
And here is probably the most valid point Joe Rogan made in this short discussion, that the presence and influence of the availability of models of life and role models play a critical role in a person's early life. And when parents live their lives that are uninspired and uninnovative and even meaningless, their children grew up accepting and internalizing this kind of lifestyle and vision of life and can end up in the same meaningless, dreadful cycle as their parents. And with the ability to entice and stimulate, the cycles are just harder to crawl out with video games in them. But the issue is, this is an argument against the existence and perpetuation of the cycles, not an argument against the factors that are included in the cycles. And for someone who does not leave out a chance to advocate for the usage of psychedelics and drugs to quote-unquote broaden your cognitive horizon, the argument isn't just really good enough. Yes, video games can be a factor a person fixates on in their life so that they lose sight of other aspects of their life. But why are video games to blame here? One could also argue that the influence of objects of fixation has more to do with the popularity of the objects and how many people are in their bad life cycles. But these objects don't contribute to these cycles, at least not directly. The point here is, being objects of fixation does not necessarily make video games more liable than any other objects of fixation. And how liable the objects of fixations are, in general, is probably a different moral discussion.
And you do them and they're real exciting, but you don't get anywhere.
Right.
It's like you could do like martial arts, right? You could learn jujitsu. You get obsessed by jujitsu, and then 3 years later, you're like an elite jujitsu athlete. You're entering in competitions. You're a purple belt.
You're moving up.
Yeah, you're doing well. Right. You're thinking like, I might be able to open my own school one day.
You got confidence.
Yeah, if I have 100 students and those 100 students are paying me X amount of dollars per month, I can make a living. Holy shit, I can have this would be amazing. And then you see your jujitsu school, and your jujitsu instructor has all these students and drives a Mercedes, and he's got a nice family, and like, that's the future. This way, you're doing something exciting and fun, and you don't. Or you could just be playing fucking video games. 3 years later, you could be that same kid just playing video games, waiting for the next whatever the fuck game is, next Xbox game to come out, and you're gonna waste your time.
Now, I think Joe Rogan is confusing 2 separate arguments here. First of all, is the comparison of skills. tradition and sportsmanship in games and in traditional sports and martial arts. The thing with the skills, tradition, and sportsmanship in traditional sports and martial arts is that the quote-unquote identities of this art or sport generally have relatively long lifespans, and most of them remain unchanged during the lives of most of its participants. And for video games, you can expect that the lifespan of its identity is short due to the relatively short lifespan of video games themselves, and the fact that new video games came out every day. However, this is not a reason to consider one's time and effort spent on video games to be wasted because of, for one, the lifespan of games is still long enough for most of the players to lose interest, so the games being replaced is just part of the market and user demand cycle. And for two, the new games that are out replacing the old ones, there's generally massive areas of overlap, and the skills and understandings you have can just carry over with just a little bit of getting used to. This is especially true for casual players. New games coming out just means new kind of fun to enjoy, and the new games being out does not mean the old game is not playable anymore. And second of all, there is also an aspect of professional career longevity in Joe Rogan's argument, which he confused with the previous point. The point Joe Rogan was kind of making here is, whatever the hottest game right now is, it will not be as relevant in the next couple of years, and anyone whose career that is banking on this game will be at a loss. The point here is not entirely valid as well. Though we can see that a pro gamer banking his career on one single game will be at a loss if the game becomes irrelevant. But a counterpoint to this is, like what has been argued previously, gaming skills and experiences do carry over, and as long as the gaming modes are similar enough, the career can be transitioned as well. Also, careers banking on video games don't usually focus on single games. Streamers, game content YouTubers, for example, a lot of them actually have quite a range of games they play in order to keep their careers alive and maintaining relevance. It is slightly different for professionally competing games like Dota and League of Legends. But as the professional game competitions are becoming more and more profitable, it stands to reason that professionally competitive games with similar gaming modes will allow professional competitors to transition relatively smoothly. And with the professional, competitive, and casual gaming industry becoming more formalized, it would be reasonable to assume that the risk of entering the industry would be quite similar to the same kind of risk when entering into any other kind of new industry. And one can surely caution the people who have made those decisions against the potential risks. Wasting one's time is definitely a risk, but should it be a reason to stop someone from entering the industry at all? Only the one who made the decision should decide for themselves, isn't it? There is one underlying point though. My guess is that Joe Rogan was aware of it subconsciously, but did not present it very well. So let me present it here. No one company or corporation owns a sport. You can argue that big organizations like NFL or FIFA are like corporations and they kind of own the sport. But the thing is, if the NFL did not exist tomorrow, people can still play football because they don't own all of the courts. While for most of the video games, almost the entirety of the game is owned by the corporations that hold it. Games that can be hosted in a distributed manner like Minecraft are among the minority, and there is no professional competition for it. For games that are competitive like Dota, League of Legends, and Fortnite, and games that require some sort of ranking and item rarity control like Diablo, Path of Exile, and Monster Hunter World, the games are hosted on the servers of the companies, and this is for a really good reason like anti-cheat and intellectual property concerns. This means that even though relatively unlikely, the games can just be shut down overnight. The rules can be changed overnight, and you can safely assume that professional competitive gamers' careers are held in the hands of these game corporations. For Joe Rogan, who has experienced multiple waves of cancellation attempts and big tech censorship, he has valid reason and concern for the fragility of this kind of career path. If anyone is banking their career on the goodwill and operation proficiency of one corporation, it is almost entirely expected that their careers can get derailed by one wrong move from the company's side. And here is a more general critique of Joe Rogan's take. Video games is already a multifaceted thing in our lives now, and it being multifaceted means that people have different use of them. People can play games with leisure and relaxation just like watching TVs and movies without any additional purpose or ideals in mind. This means that people who enjoy video games may not enjoy them for any other reason other than the stimulation itself, which is only bad and harmful when one overindulges. Expecting a behavior, especially a behavior meant for leisure to produce other outcomes like career perspective or any other worldly achievements like jujitsu, dojo, and student, is not a fair ask. Not all of us need our time to be spent in order to gain something in the future. It could be something just for the moment. One could understand that quote unquote living in the moment is pretty far from a good philosophy to live by, and it reeks of commercialism and hedonism. Yet they can still entertain forms of occasional and simple fun in life. So yeah, no DMT for me, but I would still like to kill some monsters with my big ass sword without being judged for wasting my time. That will be all for my video today. Hope you like it, and I hope to see you next time.